Sorry, Ryan, I'm here. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well.
Glad to have you back.
Yeah.
It's good to be back.
I was wondering who the new guy was.
We did pretty good, but we're
These all
glad to
came
have
in
you
today,
back.
right?
I'm sorry, Gary.
I said we did pretty good, but it's good to have you back.
You did. No, you did great. You did.
I'm ready if you are.
Yep. Go for it.
Okay, we're going to call to order this meeting of the Valley Center Planning and Zoning Board for Tuesday, January 25th. For those who are willing and able, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Gary Johnson.
Here.
Paul Prager. Brian Shelton.
Here.
Paul Miller,
Here.
Mike Floyd.
Here.
Steve Conley.
Here.
Toby Meadows.
Sorry. Thank you. For everybody who's had a chance to look at tonight's agenda, is there any questions or comments? If not, I make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Also, if you've had a chance to look at the approval of the draft minutes from the December 16th meeting, are there any questions or comments to that? If not, I make a motion, we approve the draft minutes as presented. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Before I forget to mention it, I want to thank the Honorable Mayor Lou Cicerello for being with us tonight. It's always glad to have you here, sir. Okay, Ryan, any communications?
Yes, before we get started, I would like to introduce Brittany Ortega. She's our new community development assistant. Her first day was earlier this month, so glad to have her on board, and we'll just invite all the board members after the meeting, maybe just introduce yourselves. But we're glad to have her join our city family, and
Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
Welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Go easy, Your Honor. These are going to be our first minutes.
No, I appreciate that. No, that's good. Well, we're glad to have you back. Last meeting went surprisingly well without you and the city administrator here for whatever reason.
We've been awful short too.
So we've got two items tonight. Quite a few people here in the audience. I may just mention real quick to make sure that you've signed in if you didn't get a chance. We'll go through each one of these items separately. And at the time that we open up the public hearing, if you're interested in speaking, please come to the podium, give your name and address, and you have 5 minutes to speak. So we'll get to both of those here in just a minute. So if you're ready.
Gary, would you? I don't know if you want to do that now or we'll get that time.
Sure. Anybody interested? Brian, if you don't mind, thank you. So we'll start off with our first item is review of SP 2022-01, application of Barry Gaskell pursuant to section 1712, who's petitioning to build a 3,840 square feet building addition onto the existing commercial building currently addressed as 350 West Industrial. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening. Yes, it is good to be back. I would like to thank city staff, especially City Administrator Clark and our city clerk, Christy Crithers, for filling in my absence in November and December. Thank you to them, and thank you to each of you that were able to attend those meetings and review those cases. So hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season. It's good to be back. It's good to start a year fresh. So this application tonight, again, this is for a building addition to the existing building at 350 West Industrial Street. This is Gaskell Custom Cabinetry. And the city staff does recommend approval of this site plan application. The site plan itself, as well as renderings of the facade, have been included in the application along with a letter from the applicant. Mr. Gaskell is with us this evening, and of course, as always, would invite the applicant to speak if he chooses during the public hearing. This is going to allow for extra space to conduct the various aspects of business, as well as allow for additional storage. And the addition will match the existing building, so it'll be just a continuation to the north of that existing structure. City staff does, again, recommend approval of this application. For those of you newer to the board, how this works is with a site plan. Once it's received approval by you as the Planning and Zoning Board, then the applicant can submit a building permit with stamped building plans that have been stamped by MABCD, or the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department. That is a Sedgwick County, Wichita department. They do all of our commercial building inspections as of right now. And so the building permit will be issued by the City of Valley Center, and then the inspections for this commercial addition will be done by MABCD staff. And for any questions?
Ryan. Any questions for Ryan? Thank you. If not, it's 7:07. We'll open up the public hearing. The applicant is here. Like to say anything? Well, it's always good to see businesses growing. This looks pretty basic, going straight north. I am curious. I guess I haven't paid attention going by there. What happens to the west there? I was just looking on this area where it seems like all the trucks and stuff are.
That's all gone. That was a storage unit used by a gentleman that's been there.
Okay. Maybe that's why I hadn't seen that. I was just curious. That kind of caught my eye. So, okay. Well, I hope that means obviously the business is good for you. Again, it's.
Been good. Wichita's been good I've been here for 17 years.
Good. Do you think, just out of curiosity, with this addition, that you'd be able to add any more staff, or?
Yeah, I'd like to add one or two more. I mean, right now, we're just all on top of each other, and I need
Well, good. Anybody have any questions or comments? Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Now's your opportunity. Okay, if not, 7:09, and we will close the public hearing. If there's no additional questions, comments from the board, based on city staff recommendations, public comments, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board, I make a motion to approve SP 2022-01.
Second.
Second by Rick. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good, thank you. We're good, thank you. Good luck. Okay, next item is review of V 2021-05, application of Sharice Bansimer pursuant to City Code 17-1008, who's petitioning for a variance to allow for a portion of a commercial building located at 121 South Park Avenue in Valley Center to be used as a temporary residential living space. Ryan, please.
All right. Again, this variance is for the building directly behind City Hall. This is 121 South Park Avenue. This property is Zone C2, which is our general business district. Per the city's code for a general business district, you are not allowed to have it cannot be used for residential purposes, other than new buildings can be used if it is for a person that is operating their business and they own that facility. So that is allowed, but again, that's for new buildings. So the request has come before the Board of Zoning Appeals in order to allow for the applicant, Sharice Bansimer, to remain here for a period of 6 months. I will tell you, there has been some work done already to the space that is being used as a residential living space. What happened is our building inspector, Bill Andrews, and a building inspector from, again, MABCD, have gone through and looked at the work that's been done thus far. And in order to they feel that it is, again, for a temporary space, this is fine. There are some changes that do need to be made. So again, the staff recommendation is approval for this variance. This would allow the applicant to remain there for a period of 6 months from today's date. I'm going to go ahead and read this. Normally I don't, but I feel is best. If the applicant wishes to utilize the converted living space beyond July 25th, 2022, she'll be required to install an egress door or window, as well as electrical outlets to conform with the adopted building code, as noted in the attached inspection report. The appropriate permits for this must be obtained prior to the work being done, which must be finished and pass inspection by July 25th, 2022. And then the second caveat to this, again, any additional changes the applicant wishes to be made to the building will require permits for demolition, building, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, et cetera, to be obtained prior to the work being done. So again, city staff does recommend approval of this variance to allow the applicant to remain in the building and use a portion of it as residential living space with these two conditions attached. Along with the staff report at the end, there is the building inspection report. This was written by, again, Bill Andrews, our residential building inspector. This is from the visit that he and Mr. Jared Truman from MABCD, from the walkthrough that they had. As also noted in the staff report is that in order to stay here temporarily, that the applicant would install smoke detectors. Those were installed and inspected, and they passed inspection by Mr. Andrews on November 18th, 2021. And then what you see before you this afternoon, I received a number of emails of letters of support from various individuals, both in Valley Center and from the region. Those have been placed on your desk. Obviously, as you know, I like to send out staff reports at least a week in advance. So these weren't included in that, but I did receive, just so everyone is aware for the public record, did receive emails from Gwen Kelly, Brad and Tiffany Diltz, Rebecca Foster Hankins, Teresa Scott, Hazel Atherton, and then just this evening, just before the meeting, I also received one from a, well, I wrote it down somewhere, just a second. From a Mr. Mike Dixon. And then I did receive 2 phone calls as well in response to the public letters that were submitted to the surrounding property owners. Both of those individuals also did not have any issues with the board approving this variance. So there have been, between the phone calls and the emails that you have before you, a lot of support from the community and from the region in support of this approval of this variance application, which again, city staff does recommend approval of.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for providing that information. That's good to have. So there was no one in opposition.
That is correct. No opposition at all.
Would you mind explaining what you think? What's the reason behind the city code saying that commercial zone properties are not to be used for residential purposes?
So great question. So as you may be aware, we have 2 types of commercial zoning as well as industrial zoning in Valley Center, C1, C2, and then industrial. In C1, that is our central business district. So it makes, and residential is allowed in C1. I believe and that's because if you look at the zoning map, that C1 includes second-story housing that you see in Main Street. For example, the second-story apartment above Ark Valley News, there is second-story housing not occupied, but that would be available above Cottage Market. C1 is more of a dense mixed use, more of that historical mixed use of residential and various types of commercial. In C2 you find generally outside of C1. So think about the commercial strips along Meridian, some of the other areas that are just south or just north of C1 that runs along Main Street. Those are strictly commercial activities. And so I think the reason you see that differentiation is because of the existing building stock that exists between C1 and C2.
That makes sense. I appreciate that. I was just curious more than anything.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm curious also if she's requesting 6 months, if she gets it fixed up and it goes longer, can it be rezoned to where she doesn't have a problem?
The issue with that is that if it was to be rezoned residential, then she wouldn't be able to do her commercial activities.
As a C1.
Oh, as a C1. I can see that would be definitely a viable option. Yes.
Okay, because you'd mentioned in here that as long as she puts an egress and all that, she can stay there.
Right. The city is granting, as long as the requirements to meet the code are met, that she can remain there. Yes.
Okay, so that would actually be a C1 then.
I'm sorry?
That would actually be a C1 then. at that time?
Well, it'd have to go through the formal rezoning process, and that process is that rezoning application is submitted to the city. It comes before you as the Planning and Zoning Board. If you as the board recommend approval, then it goes to City Council for final approval as a rezoning ordinance. So that would definitely, I think that would definitely be a viable route that the board can consider when reviewing this application. Yes.
Now, if that were the case, she would have to submit that before that July 22nd date.
That is correct. Yes.
So is there an intent, we're going to open up the public hearing in just a minute. Is there an intent then to still use this as commercial, or just at least to be able to keep it as viable for commercial?
I would have the applicant
We can talk
answer
to the
that during the
applicant
public
here. That's
hearing.
fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely save that for the public hearing.
Yeah, it's confusing because right now we're trying to make a decision on if we're going to do a variance. But then there's also in there, it says that if she also does this, then
Mhm.
it'll be okay for longer.
Right. And it's up to you, again, it's up to you as the board to make that determination. If you feel that 6 months is not long enough, then you can amend that.
Is it possible to approve a variance and then at the same time try to process through a C1?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah, you can approve this variance and then make the end date whatever you want it to be. Again, city staff is recommending 6 months.
Mhm.
But once this variance is approved, if you recommend that she go through the rezoning process, then absolutely, yes, we can continue to work through that process in that 6-month period.
But while this process is still going, she could actually still.
That's
process
fine.
it. So
That's-
next month, as an example, she could process the paperwork for that.
Well,
other
we've
piece.
passed so the deadline has already passed for the February Planning and Zoning Board meeting. So March would be the next one that it could be reviewed by this board.
So that would give her ample time to meet.
Yes.
Within that time.
Yes. Yeah, if it went before the board in March, then it could be submitted to City Council for their first meeting in April.
Gotcha.
Well, why don't we, it's 7:18, and why don't we open up the public hearing?
I'm Sharice Bonsmer. I have been remodeling this building since 2019. When COVID hit, I produce products and sell throughout the state. I have 15 different locations. I produce sauces, rubs, mixes. I also have several other people running my certified kitchen that are also doing the same thing. I also have 2 bakers. I have another company that's doing catering that's starting this next month, and a candy maker. I am trying to bring in more people to help produce product and deliver throughout the state. I moved in the building during COVID. I met with our city administrator at that time. This was 1.5 years ago. It was not a problem until they did not get access to my parking lot for Fall Fest. And next thing you know, the cops were there and I was served papers in front of all of my vendors and my farmer's market. Not happy at all. He could have had a conversation with me. He could have done anything. My goal is not to turn it into a residence. It's not beneficial for this community. This building could be making tons of money. We know what Howard made in it. We know that this building has potential. There's a ton of square footage. I would like to finish the building. Everyone else involved in the project, when COVID hit, backed out. I was going to lose every dime I had, every 401k I'd saved that I cashed in, my rental properties I sold, everything was going to be lost. I moved in, I met with the city administrator. At that point, we were looking at both lots, and I was paying outrageous amounts in water fees for the parking lot, which was not needed. There's no stormwater fees, but really, $142 a month for rainwater. But that alone, between both the base of stormwater fees, was ridiculous. And Brent said, well, let's handle one thing at a time and let's get the lots merged and get that taken care of. So we did. And he said he did not have a problem with me living in the building. And if something came about, we would address it. But yet he is the one who served me 1.5 years after. I'm not happy at all, because I put everything into this. In 6 months, I can't say that I'm going to have another $40,000 to fix the roof and the other issues with the building. So in 6 months, I will be back at this point, but I'm not looking to turn it into a residence. I want a private home. I want other businesses in there generating revenue for this community. I brought in 50 businesses all summer long to do that. I'm bringing in other businesses and producers to sell throughout the nation and the state. hoping to put the product over here at Amazon too, where we're grossing even more. I decided after the way the city had treated me to stop putting all my effort and time and money into the city, and I went after getting more producers. And we are still doing that. And we are going after more retailers for each of our products, and I'm bringing in more. Like, I've had it. Like, I've given my all to the city this entire summer. And even city council said they wanted foot traffic downstairs. He could have handled this in any other way. He could have had a conversation with me. He could have made a phone call. But to belittle me in front of every vendor at Fall Fest, I even downsized Fall Fest.
So
to
I've got a question for you, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to get to the point of the matter for tonight. So I heard you say that your goal is to not make this a residential, but I want to make sure it's really clear for us what your goal is. And I don't want to.
I want to bring in more businesses and possibly event space to generate revenue within this community. 6 months might not be enough time with the way things are going with the product, with the materials, with pricing. 6 months, I'm not sure as a single mom I can come up with $40,000. I applied for several grants, which I'm working with them right now with USDA for extra refrigeration and things like that. So we could possibly have a type of grocery or have walk-in coolers for catering or events, things like that. But a lot of those things are going to take time. I didn't plan on everyone else backing out.
I understand. And I know a lot
I
of.
don't know at 6 months I don't know if we're going to be able to do this again for another 6 months and show you where I stand. But right now I'm trying to get the basement to stop flooding and the roof to stop leaking. Even for the market, I put up hallway blocks so you don't see all that mess. But I'm trying to get that building to generate revenue. When I first moved in there, it was full of complete trash, rats, people's stuff. I had no idea who it was. I'm hunting down people that had passed away that left all their stuff there.
So I assume then that the best way that you can approach this and try to make this a more viable use for the building and business is that you need to be able to live there for some period of time. Is that safe to say?
Not have any extra funds to live somewhere else. It's either I lose it all or I keep going.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah. Would a year help or not? Okay. And
Hope I have a yard and a home within a year.
do you own the building?
No, my uncle, or it's actually be my second cousin. My great uncle owned the building and he sold it to his son and they hold it within a trust and I make payments. I pay all the taxes, all the insurance, every dime on the building, and then I make a portion of a payment for mortgage. But eventually we're going to be transitioning that into a bank loan.
Okay, so you do plan on buying the building in the future?
Yeah, I'm making payments through the trust to keep it afloat and whatever extra towards it to bring down that payment for the bank. But yes, my long-term goal is to stay here, to bring in more businesses, sell more product. I've got 3 more products I'm adding to my line, and I'm looking at adding 15 new stores in the next 2 weeks, if I can get my jars in plastic.
Any other questions?
So back, like he was asking earlier, specifically what would happen in 6 months if everything worked out the way you wanted? You want a temporary living space. 6 months from now, you have your own place and you can use the space you would use for living in order to expand the business.
I'll move
correct?
out and have a
But-
yard and a garden.
But what if 6 months comes and you can't?
I don't foresee that I'm going to, if I'll lose everything and the building will go back to vacant or sold.
But I will say that just so we're all on the same page, and obviously none of us hope that for you, but I think, Ryan, I mean, the recommendation here is for 6 months. But I thought I saw some information in here from MABCD and others that said if it had to go past that, there's certain things that need to happen. This would come back to us in 6 months. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And you may have said this, does our action tonight go before the city council?
No, a variance does not go before city council.
Okay.
You make the final decision. You as the board is making. So what happens if you just make or pass the motion as it is stated, and we get like it, nothing ton, then
We either see her again and we go through this again, or she leaves.
submit another application or move out.
And that's why I want to clarify, in my mind, that's fair. I think that's fair
And
to see how things go in 6 months. And if we need to take this up again, we would. I'd be hesitant to do any more than that myself.
The building inspection report, it just says temporary. We're just, again, recommending 6 months, but that,
Right. But tonight, so right here, unless somebody decides to make a different recommendation, we're looking at 6 months as recommended by staff.
this is just the recommended motion. You as the board make the final.
No, I agree, but that's our starting point. Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience? Or sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you have anything
That's
else to add? Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience like to speak? Yes, sir.
I'm Paul F. Good. I'm an attorney here in town. I got to know Sharice when Abigail Bansper, his daughter's father, was killed in an accident. And so I've been engaged on her behalf to take care of her. When there's an industrial accident, the money is not paid out in support or anything like that. It's kept for the child till the child's 18. So she doesn't have any child support for Abigail. She supports these two girls all of her own. So she is struggling with cash position. I personally retired the active practice of counsel last August 1. I'm back in full-time practice now, but she didn't call me to get advice. She couldn't afford to go to other attorneys, and the matter is really, really simple. That came on. There was an alleged violation of Code Section 17.04.10.f.1. It's what is referred to in the basis upon which the violation or the variance is sought. It's saying that this building is not in violation or is not compliance. It's in variance with the code because there's living residential use. And if you read the statute, it's real simple. It reads as follows. No new building shall be used for residential purposes except for the use of the owner or operator of a business located on the premises. This is not a new building we're talking about. This building was constructed in 1984. The statutory construction of the ordinance is again real simple. Any ordinance is legislation, and legislation must be strictly construed by the fact finder, which is the board. You guys have to strictly construe the language of the ordinance. The ordinance says new structure, okay? And under 17.03.023, new structures are all structures built after the ordinance was adopted, which was September 18, 2014. There is no code violation with regard to this building. There does not need to be a variance. She has gone from day one before she became involved in this project to seek guidance from the city officials. The city administrator has told her there is no issue. There have been two situations where there have been disagreements between the city administrator and my client, Sharice Bansimer. And to me, the actions based upon the ordinance are arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable, subjecting the city to damages. It's ridiculous. There is no violation of the code, no need for a variance. And this single mom had to write a $200 check to get me involved. I'm not getting paid for this. Get me involved for justice to be done. It's a very simple reading. A strict construction only applies if a new building is involved. This is an old building, it's not prohibited. The variance absolutely can be granted as set forth in staff's response. It's a no-brainer. There's no conditions against granting the variance, but no variance is needed because there is no violation.
Ryan?
This is,
I appreciate that. Ryan, can you address that matter?
Yeah, is the one of the reasons for the variance because of code requirements?
So again, this is a violation because in C2, you are not allowed to, the only place where it talks about residential, being able to use a building located in a C2 district is when it talks about a new building. And so that's where it's coming from, zoning code. Also, the work that was done, that has been done already, was done without a building permit. And so that's a clear violation. You're not allowed to do work like that without a building permit. And so that's why the inspection was done by Mr. Andrews and representation from MABCD to determine what needs to be done, what needs to be pulled in terms of a building permit to bring this building into our adopted building code. So there are two issues here.
Let's say that first part again, because I think I heard something different, maybe. Did you just say in C2 that it's allowed for residential if it's a new building?
Only if, yes, in C2 where it talks about residential in C2, the only place it talks about that is if it's a new building, you can have residential, again, if it's used by the person that is occupying that building and using it for business purposes. It can be a secondary use in
So that would
structure.
mean that a existing building requires a variance.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
because that's the opposite of what we heard.
It says new building. That's what the ordinance says. You by law are required to strictly construe. What does new mean? They define new in another provision of the ordinance.
I don't think this is a matter of defining what new is. You two are saying two different things, and I'm going to go with what Ryan said. That in C2, only new allows residential if you're also running the business at the
Correct.
same
That's
time.
the only,
Okay,
that is the only way you can do it.
I got you. Thank you.
Yes. Now, I will say, the only caveat to this would be if it was non-conforming. So the adopted zoning code was adopted in 2014. Let's look at it. We'll look at it from one more perspective. Let's say that prior to the adoption of the existing zoning code, that a section of a building in a C2 zone property was used for residential purposes. That would be grandfathered in, or it would be an allowable non-conforming use of a building because it predates the existing zoning code. In 2014, there was no residential activity that I'm aware of anyway in this building. And so that's why it is not non-conforming or grandfathered in.
Right. Since it's not a new building, it requires a variance.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely.
There is only one mention of residential use of C2. We have no new building shall be used for residential purposes except for the owner. New buildings, the owner can live there. That's a given. That's all the language in there. There is no prohibition for residential use of C2, period. I don't know where the violation is being pulled from, but I have a feeling why. And it's not appropriate. I would request for you, number one, to rule that the variance is not necessary. It was not a violation of the code. And number two, you have no authority to direct, but I would advise the city to go ahead and refund the 200. There is no need for it. There is no language in the code that allows for this abuse and harassment of a citizen, period.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public who'd like to speak on this item? Yes, sir.
My name is Howard Botts, and I'm the one that built the building. The building was built back in '76, and it was built for manufacturing. It was in industrial. We had it industrial then, and they went to commercial. But anyway, to make a long story short, I've been in Valley my whole life, and I've seen Valley work with people that are trying to do businesses, and they succeed as long as we can work together in a common goal. But when we start going at each other, it's not going to work. So in essence, I look at this as there's people living above businesses in downtown Valley Center everywhere. The building north of the building I own now, which is 226 West Main, the building north of it was a house, and the guy moved in and he wanted to make a business in programming for CNC machines. And the city come down on him because it didn't have access for public and this and that. Well, after working together, and I came and spoke for him, and what he done did not need access for public transportation because that wasn't his business. So they looked at that. This was a house that was about ready to fall down. He went in after we started working with him, redone that house. That house still stands there. It's in good shape. He's put a business in the back to work out of. I think if we work with people in the industrial area, in the downtown Valley Center area, we will do well. Another one was when a plastic company come in and they wanted a tax abatement for a certain period of time so they could rebuild and add to their property, and they got a lot of trouble from the city. I come in and I ask them, let's work with them. They did that, and we've got a business there that is flourishing and has progressed, and I see it expanding later on down the line. I think this is a case right here where we need to start working together as a common goal. She's not going to live there permanently. But the thing is, I know what the taxes and the insurance costs on that building. It's $8,000 annually, and the insurance is every bit that much. I don't know how she can do it any other way as a mom with her kids. I think we need to work with her to grow her business. She's got a good business head to make that business grow. And I think it will happen if we can work together on it. She has some problems with the building. I know what they are, the roof leaks. And that's going to take money to coat that roof to where it won't leak anymore. She don't have the money to do that because she's bogged down with taxes, insurance, and business expenses and everything else. I think if we work with her over time, all of that will take care of itself. But I know of in the Harris building, above that, there was people living there at one time. The hair salon over next door to him, there's people that live there upstairs now. Tony Schock, he's made a home out of his business where he had there.
Ryan, I think that and I don't mean to butt in, but why, before you go too far on that, I think we established that that was the C1 area. It's a different zoning, and so I don't know if you had a chance to hear that earlier, but this is two different zoning, so we can't exactly compare those to where this property is at.
Yeah. Well, I think what she's trying to do is to work with you.
Yeah.
And I think for a variance for 6 months is very reasonable.
And we appreciate that. And we haven't made a decision yet, but I might remind everybody that the action before us, the recommendation from staff is to work with her. And we haven't recommended that just yet, but so far, I would agree with you. And I appreciate your input.
All right. Well, thank you.
Anybody else from the public would like to speak on this item? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Lou Cicerello, Valley Center Mayor. First of all, I am speaking for the governing body. And this is unusual because I would never step in to one of my board's discussions about something, but I want you to know that the governing body wants her to stay, okay? There were some things that were mentioned that may not be accurate. The variance was based on if she brings it up to that code, then she's allowed to stay there, period. because that would make it a livable, acceptable residence. So the egress and electrical, if that is done, she doesn't have to leave in 6 months. She can stay there. That was what, and that's the way it was brought to us, which is what the governing body was more than happy to work with her for. As far as what her attorney said, our city attorney has looked at the code, and he reads it as you and Ryan reads it. So our city attorney has also been involved in that. So, but I want you to know that we don't want her out. Okay, we want to see her succeed. I love going to her on Saturdays to the farmer's market, you know. So no, we do not want her out. We want to do what we can to help her. And I've also spoken with the owner's power of attorney. They also agree that nobody wants her out. Okay, it's that simple. So I'm just here to say that yes, the governing body is all for this as well. But I wanted to make a couple little minor adjustments to what was said. So, but that's all I've got. Thank you.
Mayor. We appreciate it. Yes, sir.
I would just ask, where is the language that prohibits residential living in C2?
You know, I think Ryan already answered that question. I think the mayor responded with the city attorney has already looked into that too. So, okay. Does anybody else like to speak on this item? If not, it's 7:42 and we're going to close the public hearing. Any questions, comments from the bench?
I'd like to bring it to a year. That's my personal opinion. Everybody's for it, and she doesn't want to live there. A year might help.
Anybody else got thoughts about that?
I'd agree.
I have a question. So I'm assuming we're living in a basement, given that you need to put in an egress window.
The window, he is talking, only thing Jared said that I needed to do, he said he would be happy to sign off right away that people were being evicted if I would put in a window on the south wall. We're now living on the left half of it.
Ryan, what would need to happen by the inspection that was done and what's been said for us to, if we wanted to make a recommendation for a year tonight, what would need to happen?
So again, based on the inspection that was done, first and foremost were the smoke alarms. So that's been fixed. The smoke alarms have been installed. Again, those were inspected by Mr. Andrews, so we're good on that front. That was the immediate concern, again, based on this building inspection report. Secondly, again, it is the egress window as well as I'm going to quote here. So Mr. Truman inspected the space available egress and bathroom access and concluded that other than the installation of smoke alarms, the space could be used as a temporary occupiable space. Again, temporary, that is not defined as it is just temporary, not permanent. But again, if in terms of staying there for a longer period of time, again, what we're referring to is egress door or window, as well as electrical outlets to conform with the adopted building code. That's not in here. Where do you read that?
That's what
Well, that was,
$600.
The only thing that we're considering tonight is the variance application. If to rezone is something you'd have to do later as the next step.
Jared said that in order
with the smoke alarms.
Correct.
And would a year be enough to do that?
And then, so again, if we chose to make this a year, that would make sure it comes back to us in a year so we could get an update.
What you can do, yes, you can require the applicant to, again, come before the board in a year's time, and we can talk about where we are in the point, what's been done, what hasn't been done. And again, as long as these, as the mayor mentioned, as long as these recommendations or these requirements are done, again, per the building inspection, then this is no longer an issue.
Okay. Thank you.
So you can either have the applicant come, or I'm more than happy on her behalf just to give a report saying, yes, the appropriate building permits were pulled, everything's been done, it's been inspected and has passed inspection. all of the requirements have been made. So, we can do this one of two ways. I'm more than happy just to make a staff report and presentation in a year's time.
And I think that would make me feel a lot more comfortable, whether it was 6 months or a year, that we'd want to hear that.
I'm looking at it, what a year from now is. January, so the January Planning and Zoning Board meeting would be January 24th, 2023.
Well, if you want, if we've got no other discussion, you're welcome to make a motion.
All right, well, I'd like to make a motion that we,
Actually, I'm sorry, Brent, will you go back to the staff report at the end?
Yeah, Mike.
And I apologize, Mike, but if you will, go ahead and read this, but change the date from July 25th, 2022 to January 24th, 2023. I know that's a lot to read, and I apologize, but I think it needs to be stated in black and white for the record.
staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals grants a variance allowing the applicant to use a portion of the building located at 121 South Park Avenue as residential living space for a period of time not to exceed 1 month or 1 year from the date of the board meeting, with the following conditions. If the applicant wishes to utilize the converted living space beyond July 24th, 2023, she will require to install egress door or window, as well as electrical outlets to conform with the adopted building code as noted in the attached inspection report. The appropriate permits for this must be obtained prior to the work being done, which must be finished and pass inspection by July 24th.
No, it'll be January 24th, 2023.
Sorry, you're right.
That's okay.
January 24th, 2023. Any additional changes the applicant wishes to be made at the building will require permits for demolition, building, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, etc., to be obtained prior to the work being done. Do I hear a second?
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Or was that Mike and
Yeah.
Rick?
and
Okay.
Rick. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't.
You ended, yeah, he ended
Actually,
it at
I think I
7:42.
did. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, I think I did. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just want, I would like to find a resolution if you grant by the documentation showing. My problem is, I'm gonna have to revise my plan after this year. It has restrictions she doesn't have any need for, it's not provided for. And that would be another appeal, it costs the city.
Yeah, what I would recommend probably is that you contact the city attorney. I would reference you to the code. I heard what Ryan and the mayor said is in the code. That's what we are referencing, is what is in the code. There's not something else out there. This becomes a matter of interpretation. So I think if you have a different interpretation of what's in the code, you got to do what you feel you got to do with that.
So again,
That's my recommendation.
And just to, again, reiterate what was just passed by the Board of Zoning Appeals, is this allows for the applicant to continue to use the residential living space as she has been, continue to use it with the stipulations that by January 24th, 2023, that the egress window and electrical that's been required per the building inspection report, that work's been done,
If she wants to remain.
if she wants to remain. So
What electrical? Say either one.
This says, should permanent occupancy become requested, there would need to be an egress door or window installed for this room, as well as electrical outlets added to conform to code. Again, this is a direct quote from the building inspection, so. I
And so
was
that might
not-
be something you'll need to get clarification on what the electrical outlets are.
And Mr. Andrews would be, well, again, we can provide that clarification. Bill can provide that clarification as the building inspector. Again, this is based on the report that, this report, again, was a result of the visit and the inspection that Mr. Andrews and Truman made to the property.
Thank you. Right.
But again, this allows her to stay here The work it doesn't have to be done tomorrow. It doesn't have to be done next week. It just has to be done by January 24th, 2023. In order to remain past January 24th, 2023.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you working us through.
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, thank you. Good luck. I believe what the mayor said, and I would agree with the mayor that everybody is hoping for your success. So good luck. Okay. Brian, any new business or old or unfinished business?
Just a few reports. First, our next meeting will be held on February 22nd. So this interesting date is 2/22/22.
And it's a Tuesday.
And it's on a Tuesday.
Yep.
So that will be our next meeting. We will have one application to review. Next, the city will once again be sponsoring a booth at the home show. That's sponsored by the Wichita Area Builders Association, or WABA. This is going to be held next week, Thursday through Sunday. I do have the sign up in case any of you do have some time, would be willing to help work our booth. Again, what we do as the City of Valley Center for our home show booth is we talk about our city's housing incentive programs. We talk about our school district. We sponsor a gift basket of local area featuring products from local area businesses, as well as hand out gift bags. We also will be talking about the new subdivisions that you as the board approved through platting last year, talking about the new subdivisions that'll be coming online later in this year in 2022. So it's a great event, a great way for us to publicly get out who we are in Valley Center to a particular audience. So again, I do have my sign-up sheet with me. If you want to get with me afterwards, in case you just have an hour or two. I do have tickets and badges, so you don't have to pay to get in. It is held at Century 2. So it's you don't have to pay to get in if you work as a volunteer.
When did you say that was again?
It is.
Kind of Friday, you try to.
It's Thursday through Sunday, February 3rd through the 6th.
Oh, it's this coming weekend.
It's not this weekend, but the following weekend. Yes.
Are you going to pay us the same as you pay us to be on this board?
Absolutely.
Twice as much. It's Pro Bowl week, so
Guys, yeah, that's a good point. No,
But anyway,
thank you for mentioning that. That is a good deal.
I am sharing that with all of my boards. Again, we like to get a collaborative group of volunteers that represent various aspects of our community. So again, if you can, just let me know. And then lastly, wanted to share some exciting news that you may or may not be aware of. At our last city council meeting, city council decided to pursue looking into public power, or municipalizing our power supply, breaking our agreement that we have with Evergy. So this was done by resolution and ordinance. We will still, for the time being, have our contract with Evergy. It'll just be on a year-to-year basis. And the next steps moving forward is we will be submitting an RFP to hire a firm to come in and do a feasibility study of the city becoming its own electric power provider. Electricity would be, the city would purchase electricity on the open market. So we're not looking to build, like a nuclear power plant or solar fields, at least right now anyway. But this is what we'll be doing, what the process is once the feasibility study is conducted, which would be about 18 to 24 month process. Eventually what will happen is if council recommends based on the results of the feasibility study, that this would actually go to the citizens, to the residents of Valley Center through a vote to secure bond funding to purchase the existing infrastructure. And then if we get to that point, then we really do municipalize our power, and it'd be like water or sewer that's provided by the city. The city of Valley Center would also supply electricity. This has been done in other communities. There are currently 118 cities in Kansas that provide their own electric power to their residents, and we would be joining those 118 communities. It's been proven that that public municipalized power, the rates are lower. Response times to incidents and issues are quicker, and it definitely brings in more revenue, which can be used for not only the electric infrastructure, but making other quality of life and quality of place improvements in our community. So we're at the initial stage right now, but very excited to be pursuing this option for our residents in the community.
I know there's some places that have
power islands for the cities that basically are like a sustainability or resilience type effort. So it's like a backup to the main grid.
Yeah. So no, this would be, we would take ownership of the existing grid. You would get an electric bill from the city of Valley Center. And so again, it's going to be a long process, but definitely excited to be looking at this option.
What are the negatives?
We've researched, I would maybe defer to the city administrator. I don't think, the only negatives, I don't know what those negatives would be.
Well, then why did we do this years ago?
Because we've never had anybody that has been an administrator from an area that's done this before. I honestly.
Well, there's 117 other cities out there that can help.
I love public power. I come from the public power state of Nebraska.
I'll tell you exactly what I said at the council meeting. You know, if we didn't have somebody that came in here from that, I mean, I never thought that this was a possibility. I just figured Evergy had the monopoly. And, you know, my first thought was, yes, we've got something because, you know, Evergy and Southern Star both have monopolies, you know? So it's like, yeah, you're right. If we'd known about this years ago, I'm sure we would have pursued it years ago.
How does it work? How do you purchase electricity less than what someone else gives it to you?
And I don't know how much you want to get into
I'm thinking solar panels.
I'll answer your first question, and that's the negatives. There are some potential negatives, and that's really competing with the private industry when it comes to hiring professional linemen, foremen, superintendents. Those are highly qualified, highly skilled positions that demand a high wage. And so, linemen roughly will be in that $30 to $50 an hour range. They're high-end wages because, of course, how dangerous that occupation is, and there's really not that many folks getting into it. And so, for the one viewer that's watching on YouTube, if you are contemplating going to college somewhere, post-secondary, look at the trade programs. Look at going through an apprentice program and becoming a lineman or a journeyman and those things, and become a lineman, because it has a tremendous benefit financially. And so really hiring folks will be the biggest negative and the biggest issue. However,
Pratt College, Pratt Community
there you
College
go, Pratt Community
has
College.
a
There you go.
lineman course, because I actually happen to know two young men that graduated with my son from high school that are both now linemen that went there and took the course. So.
Roughly right now, we receive about 5% in our franchise fee. Well, that's a direct pass through that Evergy just passes through whatever community they're in. If your franchise fee is 5%, 10%, 15%, that doesn't matter. That just gets paid by you and I who live here. And so that doesn't get taken out of the shareholders who are making millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on our back. And so that's why not too many municipalities go through with pursuing municipalization, because the electrical industry will come down on us very heavy. They'll come down with far more resources and power than you and I will ever have. And so it's a big challenge. It does take out administration. It takes out councils. The private electrical industry will buy council chairs to making sure that they have a majority of votes, so then it doesn't go to the vote of the people on the revenue bond side. The first step that we did, that was the easy step. We just hit them first. Now we put our guard up and we look to see what the first punch is. And that's why we sent out a mailer to all 3,000 utility accounts in Valley Center, making sure that they have the accurate information and the right information from the city first, and not lies and misinformation from the private electrical industry. Because see, they can just make up whatever they want. That's not how it works in the municipal side. And so, roughly, we receive anywhere from $350,000 to $450,000 a year on our 5% franchise fee. Okay, so then that puts us, around that $10 to $12 million in total revenue. Roughly, to run a system of this size, according to the national average stuff, is around that $2.5 to $3 million. And so, when you do that math, when you're talking, $7 to $9 million worth of revenue, yeah, they're going to fight. And that's what they don't want you all to know. And so we'll take those revenues and we'll put them back into the local economy and back into the local taxpayers' pockets versus the shareholders. There's a very clear-cut, beautiful process in the Kansas statute that allow for this to happen. They'll just try to buck you at every single step. And so, once it goes to the court to decide how much, from the feasibility study, we'll bring that feasibility study to a judge, and the judge will select a panel, and we'll get a representative. Evergy will get a representative, and then the state, I think KCC gets a representative, and then they try to negotiate a price off of that feasibility study. Well, that price is never going to be what Evergy wants. And so we'll get to arbitration, and we'll go through all that process, and it'll take another 6 months to a year. And then we'll go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is going to ultimately determine, hey, this is that fair and equitable price. Here's our final ruling, and they'll bang the gavel.
That includes buying all the infrastructure from.
Buying all the infrastructure. Yep. And then also probably having to build our own substation.
Right.
Because we'll have to build our own substation, basically right next to the one that they have on Ford Street that has a meter that then goes to ours. And then the same thing out west that they have out west as well. And then what will happen is, they had hoped, that Brent either, leaves or gets fired or those things in the meantime. And then they'll come back, hopefully about spring of 24. And then they'll say, good luck getting it passed by the voters. And then they're going to put out a multi-million-dollar campaign of advertising to disinform everybody in the public to try to vote it down. So the goal is to have it on the November 2024 presidential election ballot, because if we learned anything with the sales tax, whenever we put it on a general presidential ballot, more people show up.
Yeah.
And we want to hear from the majority of citizens in Valley Center. It should be your choice, not our choice. It's our job to present and to bring that information to you and say, hey, here's an option. If you want to do it, great. Here's the benefits. If you don't want to do it, great. We'll just, be the sheep and sign the 20-year agreement. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
Did I
But-
see on that
There you go.
information you sent out that there was a committee that would be put together?
Yes.
Could we have a representative of this board on that committee? Does that make sense? or-
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want one, I actually, there's one member on your board that likes to try to be actively involved in every single committee. And so I had Brian, just so you know, I did have Brian Shelton on my short list of folks that I was going to ask.
No, well, I would like to make sure there's somebody from this
Yep.
board.
And if you guys want to make a recommendation, you sure can, and let me know. And
Well, if anybody's interested, I guess, you might let Ryan or Brent know, or if you're the chosen one, then you represent us well.
I think on every single committee that we've had open, Brian has submitted an application on. So
Yeah. Well, thank you. I just want to make sure. That's good.
quick questions.
That was
Sorry,
good.
if I divulged this. So I
No,
keep saying so
no,
long.
that was good explanation. Thank you.
Yep. Have a great night.
You too. Anything else?
No, that's it. Again, thank you for being here this evening.
Yeah. Any items from board members?
No.
Do we always need to make a formal motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All right. I move to adjourn.
Robert's rule says.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
I figured we did. The different times over the years we didn't, but that's easier. All right. Thank you. See you
Thank
in
you.
February 22nd.
At 2, right?
2 and 2.
2:22.